Sometimes when you set out to go somewhere, you have a pretty good idea about where you're going. And on the way, you sort of lose that feeling of destination. Now, this story starts so very far back in time, and also very far from here. When the universe emerged, there was a you could call it an entity of light who simply started to move, and it moved with a certain destination and purpose. It started at almost no speed, and it slowly accelerated into unbelievable, enormous speed. The funny thing is that this piece of light was not hitting anything, so it was never seen when it moved through the universe. The green, well, stone of light, we could call it. A jewel, maybe. It seemed like it from the very beginning had a pretty good idea where it was going, what its destination was. One magic day, it hit Earth, and it hits an ocean nobody really heard of. It did not even have a name at that time. When the speck of light hits the surface, and it's actually, this is not a very big particle or big stone of light or whatever. It's very, very, very small, but the whole ocean lights up. And underneath the surface of the ocean, it becomes bright as day, just for a few seconds. There is many stories of this is the ocean which gave birth to the mermaids. The water is truly magic. Many seamen have tales to tell of the god that apparently sleeps at the bottom of this ocean. This particular night, there was a beautiful ship seen on this ocean. It was so gently by the waves being pulled back and forth, like a mother moves the cradle of her first baby. In the front of the ship there was a young man standing, alone, looking down in the ocean, but his eyes did not really see anything, as he was blinded by sorrow. He did not see its beauty and the reflection of the moon above him. He was very handsome, he was young, but he did not see any beauty anywhere. The air caressed gently his skin, but he did not feel its touch. The vastness of the ocean could not be sensed by his heart, as all was dark inside him. He looked so burdened, like he was weighed down by maybe all the unfilled promises of life. Well, all these promises life makes to a young person, but they do not always fulfill. Like he could not find himself out of the wilderness of life. One could guess that maybe he was caught up in the web of love. Ah, and so it was. The girl he loved, and he really loved this girl, did not love him back. And even if the world was vast in abundance, he only saw the lack of love from her. He looked into the depths of the ocean and wondered if all these thoughts of despair would cease down there in the water. He thought about his father, who he had promised so much, but it seemed so far away now, and he almost without knowing it decided to give up. And at that moment, the ship hits something in the water, and he loses his grip and falls into the water without even making a sound. He does not utter the word of help, but his cry is still heard by someone deep below, maybe the mermaids. Now, while the young man was standing in the front of the ship, looking down into the water, a whole mass of fish had gathered right under him, sensing his grief. They actually were swimming very, very close to each other. And when he falls, they swim even closer to each other. And they actually make, well, you could call it is almost a cushion or mattress. So when he falls, oh, so soft. Well, imagine lying on a mattress, all alive, looking up at the moon and the stars. It is so peaceful, and as he has not slept for many nights, he falls finally asleep. His dreams are very sad at first, but it is strange. It feels like every time he dreams a sad thought, it falls down to the bottom of the ocean. It is like he can only hold on to the good thoughts, and at last he dreams of life. Well, they're just dreams of life should be, and almost all is still and slow. And in these dreams, everything makes sense. Have you tried that? Have a dream where everything makes sense. And you can't remember what you dreamt when you woke up. All the bad thoughts are lying on the bottom of the ocean, and he feels nothing but the sense of love from the ocean, the fish. He understands so much in this sleep, much more than he will understand when he awakes. When he awakes, it's still very early in the morning. He noticed the smell of salt. He can feel the fresh air and the waves. But he can't remember anything, not only of the night before, but anything. He does not know his own name, what he's doing there. But he's really not worried about it. He's just open his eyes and look up into the skies above him are still a bit dark, and then it slowly gets lighter, and for a while he just simply lie and notice the wind, the different birds, nature awakening. He finally very casually gets on his feet and starts walking along the beach. While his fine dress dries up. At some point he noticed there is a different scent in the air, and he turns towards the land and starts walking into the land. He picks up speed and walks faster and faster. He enjoys how the body smoothly does exactly what he wants it to. He actually gets a bit playful, he starts jumping from one top of a stone to another. Along the road there is different stuff where he can challenge his balance. And so he does. He is like but a child, but a very powerful child. He comes to a small farm where there is some animals outside. A cow, some hens, an old horse and a sheep. The cow looks at him and greets him loudly. The young man starts to laugh, and the cow makes even more noise, so the young man laughs even louder. And all the commotion makes the people living in the farm come out to have a look. They look at him with surprise, but the surprise seems to grow more as they look at him. They smile and very friendly, but he can see there is something about the way he looks which they also find a bit frightening. Or at least they look a bit nervous, he thinks. So he quickly greets them very warmly, and then he moves on along the road. When he walks along the road, his mind starts to wander. He thinks about the people who have built this road, how long time it has taken them, how many people that has walked here before him, and what their lives were like and what their lives would be like. And once upon a time this road was not here even, and one time in the future it will probably not be here again. He notices himself, and he gets this idea that what if I was the only person alive? How would I know if everybody else is not just an illusion? He thinks of the moon and gets this thought that maybe, unlike the moon, I can only be seen because there is some light shining on me. Maybe, and he thinks and he thinks and he ponders this and he thinks about all sorts of important things, and it feels like that these thoughts have been waiting to come out and just simply run their course. At some point, while he walks in his own thoughts, 3 soldiers on horse ride past him at great speed, and he turns around and looks after them, and he notices that they actually stop down the road, and it seems like they're pointing towards him, and they seem to be discussing something. The young man notices this, but it doesn't really worry him. After a while now, he notices that the two soldiers now follow him at a distance. Then they slowly ride up to him. The young man turns and greets them. He says, "Good morning. Wonderful for a walk on your bare feet." He looks down at his feet, he doesn't have shoes or socks or anything on. The two soldiers look bewildered at each other. Then they nod their heads and rides back a bit. The young man notices that they keep on following him, and he waves at them. For some reason then, they start walking next to their horses, and he noticed that it seemed like they also have taken off their boots and are also walking barefooted on the road, just as the young man. The landscape changes on the road. There's more farms, more buildings, more people. He actually greets everyone he sees very warmly. But you notice that most of the adults looks a bit confused and start to mumble when he walks past them. The children, well, they all seem very friendly though. He actually meets a blind man also who's standing next to the road and asks him where this road leads to. The blind man tells him that the road leads to the main capital of the land, where the big castle is. So he walks on, and he notices that the two soldiers behind him now have turned into 10 men, well, all walking at foot. Well, he noticed this wonderful scent of food in the air. And also then he noticed that he is actually very hungry. The soldiers behind him also stand still. They probably notice the scent of food also. The young man starts to walk towards a building up the road a bit, a small road tavern, and the owner is sitting outside on the ground sewing his shoes, and he does not look up, and the young man asks him where this wonderful smell comes from, and the owner smiles and says, it's the usual stew. Then he looks up, and because the sun blinds him, he can't see the young man's face. So are you hungry, young man? The young man nods, and he helps the owner to his feet. "I could eat a cow," the young man says. The owner looks all of a sudden a bit frightened, and quickly the young man says, No, I mean, I would not. I would just like a normal portion, not a cow." The owner nods his head very vigorously many times and runs off. And you can hear he starts talking very fast inside to someone in there, and there's some noise. The soldier has also slowly moved closer. "So, are you all as hungry as I am?" The man in front, dressed more posh than the rest of them, he nods his head and says, Yes, indeed." The young man interrupts as the owner now stands with a bowl of food in the door. "Ah, wonderful," he exclaims and walks towards the owner of the tavern. "Do you have enough food for these brave men?" The owner looks at the 10 soldiers and nods. The young man takes this bowl of food and sits himself under a tree. The dog of the place comes over to him and licks his feet. He laughs and gives the dog some of his meat. Life seems very simple and very good. While he eats his food, he looks at the soldiers who also decide to sit outside in the great weather and eat their food. He studies each of them at a distance and wonder about what they think about life, and if the food just tastes as good to them as it did to him. After the young man has finished eating, he goes to the keeper of the tavern, smiles, and really compliment him on his food. He tells him that it's actually the best meal ever. The keeper of the tavern is so touched that he can't talk. So the young man looks at his pocket for something to pay the man with, and he finds a single, rather big coin. It's rather heavy, but the owner now gets tears in his eyes. It's all a bit awkward, so he quickly starts to walk off from the tavern. The young man decides that there is something odd about all of this, and he starts to think very hard about how he ended up on the beach and what he did yesterday and who he is. He simply can't remember. It's like he's awake, but he's dreaming or dreaming while he's awake. He actually decides that he's dreaming. So he also decides to get the best out of this dream. He decides that he will be completely truthful about everything and honest to himself and see where that would lead him. When he gets to the gates of the big city, he looks very stern at the gatekeeper. Just to try not to smile at everybody, and the gatekeeper moves back like he was hit with lightning and walks to the side so the young man can enter. Well, he thinks he's dreaming, so he thinks he might as well try different things. It seems to him in his dream that he can do anything and get away with it. So he starts walking straight towards the castle, which for some reason seemed very strangely familiar. When he comes to the castle, there's a man greeting him very friendly. He bows down and asks him if he is hungry, and the young man says, "No, but I would like something anyway. I would like to eat something unusual." He is then led to a beautiful dining room and fed an amazing meal. The whole evening he is served food, and there is dancers and acrobats performing, and he has a wonderful evening. Everybody seems very friendly. But he has this odd feeling that this is unreal, and people around him, well, they're somehow playing a part, and it all has to end now. He all of a sudden gets up from where he's seated, and there is silence in the hall, and he says to a servant, "I would like to sleep now. Is there anywhere I can sleep?" He's then led to this beautiful chamber with a luxurious bed, an amazing view. He's left alone and stands and looks over this amazing view from the room. And he is trying to work out what he should think about all this. What is it all about? He finally lies down on this enormous bed and gets this feeling there is something not right about all this wealth and how everything is. He gets this strange feeling of being trapped in this wonderful, beautiful room. There's something wrong about it all. He actually starts to cry. He feels very lost because he does not understand what is going on. He decides to try to sleep. And he lies on this big bed and turns to one side and turns to the other side, and he tries to lie on the floor. And finally he falls asleep on the floor, right in the moonlight, coming through from the window. Then there is this strange green light which starts to move up and down the walls. And in his dreams, he dreams a dream about a young king who loses his heart to a common girl, and the common girl does not want him. And then the king tries to force her to love him, and it fails. He wakes up in sweat and does not know if he is dreaming or if he is sleeping. But the green light starts now to move so gently up and down the walls that he falls asleep again. In his dream there is a voice inside him growing. This voice is his own. It does actually not say a specific thing, there is just this voice. And he knows that he has been dreaming when he was awake, and he has been awake but still dreaming. And now would be the time to come where he would need to be awake and see all as it is, as it was, and as it will be. But for now he is dreaming that he was lying on the bottom of a green ocean full of thoughts. Each thought had been floating around in the ocean for a while he is dreaming that he lies on the bottom of the ocean and looking up through the green water on all these thoughts. He can sort of pick each thought up and look at it, turn it around, see it from different angles. Some of them are horrible thoughts, but when you turn them, there is another layer. There is something to be known about this thought. He keeps looking, and the water simply brings him all his bad thoughts, and he turns them and looks at them and sort of understand what it's all about. There's been so many choices, you see, choices that he has made, choices which has led to his confusion, but slowly all the illusion disappears and the bewilderment disappears, and his imagination starts to take the thoughts and throw them into new combination where there is opportunity and there is possibility. He wakes up early in the morning and feels, so full of life, love, and he feels so ready to make it all like it should be. He looks at the sun rising above the capital and know who he is. He knows that this is actually his bed. This is his own bed, and this capital and his people was and is his to rule with greatness and love, and not malice, fear, and might. He remembers how he just last night stood on this balcony and thought that one surely would be a happy man living in this room. And he also remembers now that it was not so. He remembers the people he saw yesterday, the man at the tavern who fed him. He dresses himself in front of the mirror and feels, well, kind of reborn. He knows that many of his deeds have been wrong, very wrong, and many things needs to be put right. He gives himself absolution for his own sins and shortcomings and walks out of the room. And on the way down to the eating hall, he greets all he meets, servants and soldiers, and each of them he sees as a person. He notices their faces, actually many for the very first time, and he feels their gazes upon him. This is the first day of a new life, or the end of an old life, but now a life he is running away from no more. This young man lives a very long life, and each day he becomes wiser because he has seen himself. He has soared like an eagle and have seen the oceans and the land and everything from above. He has been on both sides of the mirror, and he has slept in the arms of the green ocean, where he became humble and strong like a lion. Now, it's not always that a story ends good in real life, but if you continue the story long enough and carry it through to its destination, most stories ends good.